Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Jamie Costa. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the Gallery Experience Associate at the Los Angeles Municipal Art Gallery. We're thrilled to present today's program with Maru Garcia in conjunction with her solo exhibition, Membrane Tensions, which is now on view at lamag.org through April 22nd. Before I introduce Maru, I have a few housekeeping bits. First, please make sure your microphone is muted during the speaker's presentation. We'll have a few minutes toward the end of the program for a Q&A, so if you have any questions, please feel free to enter them directly in the chat, or if you feel comfortable with taking yourself off mute at that point, you're more than welcome to ask Maru your questions directly. And as a reminder, this program is being recorded so that it can be made available on LAMAG's website at a later date. We also have live captioning available via the link in the chat, as well as sign language interpreter services for today's program, which have generously been provided to us by the City of Los Angeles Department on Disability. If you requested sign language interpreter services, I recommend pinning their screens to your window for easier access throughout the program. And with that, I am really excited and honored to introduce Maru Garcia. Maru Garcia, she, her, is a transdisciplinary artist and researcher working across art, science, and environmental disciplines. Her methodology includes both the social and hard sciences, combining a versatile laboratory and fieldwork from her background in plant chemistry and the chemical industry. Her use of media includes research, installations, performance, sculpture, and video, usually with the presence of some kind of organic matter to help understand the biological processes occurring in complex systems. Garcia's work highlights the importance of eco-aesthetics, where relationships and community are proposed as a way of building a sustainable culture. At the same time, she questions the ways science and technology have influenced the relationship between humans within the natural world. Garcia has participated in conferences, solo and group exhibitions in North America, Europe, and Asia. She was an artist in residence in the National Center for Genetic Resources in Mexico and received awards from the Los Angeles Sustainability Collaborative, Clifton Webb Scholarship for the Arts, and Fundación Humex. She is based in LA and holds an MFA in Design and Media Arts from the University of California, Los Angeles, as well as an MS in Biotechnology and BS in Chemistry from Tecnológico de Monterrey, Mexico. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Maru.
Thanks so much, Jamie, for the introduction. And thanks you all for being here. I'm very excited to be able to share this time a little bit of this project with you all. So I think Jamie is now gonna start presenting this. Well, before that, of course, I want to thank the Los Angeles Municipal Art Gallery for commissioning this installation called Membrane Tensions. This piece includes a site-specific component and a sculpture on digital work. And originally it was meant to be for a hybrid format. At that time when we were planning this, we thought that by now we would be able to enter the gallery. But unfortunately, we're still in this COVID restrictions and we are all invited to see it through this medium. Next one. So I want to start this talk framing this piece with the rest of my previous research within the category of ecoaesthetics. And being ecology, the study of the relationships between organisms and their environment, I use ecoaesthetics to bring relationships to the center of my practice. This helps me think more in terms of ecocentric ideas instead of anthropocentric ones. In previous work, I have been interested in understanding our place as humans within the rest of the natural world. One of those works have been the Vivarium series, in which I was trying to explore what was our place within of the natural world. Next, I also tried to go further and promote encounters with the other through protocols. and this in a way to develop interspecies relationships. And in these images, you can see just at water and the culture, both this type of protocols wanting to forge relationships with plants or with microorganisms. Next one. With the invitation by Donna Haraway of Making Kin, I started to think of how was possible that life emerged. And in this case, for this piece, I center my attention on kinship as well. Acknowledging our relationships formed through millions of years, evolutionary biology has allowed us to think in our common ancestor that scientists say can be traced to a single cell. What researchers call LUCA, the last universal common ancestor, can be the evidence we need to see the rest of living organisms as part of their family. But this allows us to be more careful, more empathic, to develop a better relationship with the rest of the natural world. Next. Here you can see the tree of life that represents LUCA as a common ancestor in a simplified way, giving origin to the three life domains, bacteria, archaea, and eukaryotes. And of course, we are somewhere there in the eukaryotes. Next one. And this is a more complex version of this tree of life, of this big family that we are part of. And we can also then mention time and how all these diverse organisms were evolving. The Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, and there is evidence to conclude that LUCA maybe appeared around 3.5 billion years ago. There are scientists that say that it was even farther in time. Next one. So I wanted to go further to understand even what happened before LUCA. How did life emerge? Although a definition of life is complicated and there is no consensus about it, we have seen that life involves process and patterns. There are several speculations of how this could happen. There are some scientific research that are pointing towards the origin of life in a deep sea hydrothermal vent. Another point for the primordial soup, or even we can say about the building blocks. Scientists are saying that probably could be that these building blocks arrived from outside the Earth and that found the proper environment to develop. While the details of this process are still unknown, the prevailing scientific hypothesis is that the transition from non-living to living entities was not a single event, but an evolutionary process of increasing complexity. And this process involved molecular self-replication, self-assembly, autocatalysis, and the emergence of cell membranes. Next one. Before life began, I imagine all these different chemical compounds floating and sometimes encountering each other, reacting within each other, and some protocells forming by the action of kind of an encapsulation. Of course, this formation not always was successful, but eventually with time, with an energy that was around, probably one prevails. And maybe RNA was already there and was also trapped in this capsule. Here you can see an image of what could be a protocell, that it's not having a nucleus or anything, but it's just the representation of RNA and other floating chemicals. But it's important to note that for life to emerge, a container was needed. Containers create new worlds, new reactive conditions in the inside, and a space to get in contact with the surroundings. Next one. What can be considered as a minimum expression of life is contained inside of a two-layer membrane structure made of lipids. Here you can see the image of a membrane as the outer limit that separates the cell from its surrounding environment. But more than the image of this rigid and static structure next. It's more a permeable, fluid, active, and responsive delimitation. Contains, but it doesn't isolate. The membrane, through ion channels, electron flow, and the transfer of other molecules, is the basis of communication. This limit allows the creation of new relationships. Next one. There are actually studies that are related to the tension that is produced in the membrane that affects the cell functions, and it's related to signaling and motility. Here you can see an example of the membrane stretching, moving, stretching in all directions. And some, as I was mentioning, some of these studies are saying that the importance of the membrane and of the tension of it it's even like being studied for signaling and motility and the function of the cell. So for me, reviewing the idea of the need of the membrane for life to happen, but at the same time, the need to interact with the environment and the tension that is created in it, it's what made me think of exploring the possibility of using the membrane as a metaphor. Maybe of the tension between the individual and the collective, and the possibility of stretching our containers to include the others. Next one. Coming back to this evolutionary analysis, one other concept that informed my research was encountering Lynn Margulis' Endosymbiotic Theory. She was an American evolutionary theorist, biologist, science author, educator, and was a primary modern proponent for the significance of symbiosis in evolution. Before explaining what is the theory of the Endosymbiotic theory, I want to mention how Margulis' work has been very important to me. First, her position about the way scientists are making science and the reflection that we need to go further reductionist approaches. Shifting the perspective of studying isolated objects to focusing on the relationships that are between the objects. The idea of going beyond linear thinking governed by cause-effect and embracing systems thinking that considers feedback loops. Thinking in terms of patterns and relationships. For her, there is not such a thing as a fully independent organism. Symbiosis, that means living together, we are all in fact experiencing. In the moment that we have our microbiome, it's all the microorganisms that are living in our body. She used for calling that the fact that we are living with this microbiome, that we in a way are forming a unit, an ecologic unit, what she called a holobiont. You can see her working in the lab and some of the organisms that she was analyzing. Next one. So now I want to explain about her theory of symbiogenesis. And this one is the theory that proposes that mitochondria and chloroplasts, some organelles that now we can see in eukaryotic cells, were actually descended from formerly free-living cells that were engulfed or trapped and stay in one of the cells through generations. So this was a way of creating a permanent community where they were sharing space and resources. What symbiogenesis helps us to understand is that one of the main drivers of evolution was through associations. And this is something that I was really considering for this piece. Next one. So we can now go back to the idea of Luca and think, was this single cell possible? The idea of a single cell beginning like a champion of the father of all life? And maybe we can start thinking more as thinking of the origin of life as community. And we can find evidence in microfossils pointing out to microbial communities. Here you can see an example of a fossilized microbial mat, a cross-section of a stromatolite that is actually found as evidence as well of this very ancient communities. Next one. So a revised version of the Tree of Life is making scientists think that instead of a single cell, it was more a common ancestral community of primitive cells. So we're still family, but we have never been isolated, but related. This web-like structure also considers the lateral gene transfers of the endosymbiotic theory. So you can see that the organelles coming from previous bacteria are also associated, in this case, bacteria that gave rise to chloroplasts and bacteria that gave rise to mitochondria are the kind of the elongations are relating all these domains of life. Next one. So in this case, membrane tensions wanted to explore the contained, the merged, the engulfed, and the stretched in order to understand common origins and ways for building a culture able of remediation, healing, and regeneration. As you saw in the research, I wanted to go back and try to see life and its origins and explore the metaphors that are around them. Next one. The first section of this installation presents living sculptures of SCOBY, and this stands for Symbiotic Culture of Bacteria and Yeast, and is the same culture that is used to produce the drink called kombucha. This is exactly a community of organisms living together. What one produces can be the food to the others, and these cultures have been in the gallery since November, and the conditions are monitored weekly by LAMAG staff. Here I want to give a special mention to and thanks to John Weston, who has been crucial for the realization of this project. He has been taking good care of the cultures. Next one. Some microorganisms that are in the culture are able to produce bacterial cellulose. Cellulose is the same material found in plant tissue and used for producing paper. This cellulose is harvested on site and used to intervene the gallery windows. For me, the act of covering the windows is an invitation to stretch our membranes and be able to interact with the other, to extend our range of care. This intervention wants to place all of us inside of the big cell membrane. We will see this harvesting process in a few minutes in the live stream happening right now. But here is an image of John placing this membranes to the window. Next one. As a way of experimenting process and time scales, the installation includes cameras pointing to the inside of one of the tanks and a second one pointing to the windows. Here you can see a short version of a time lapse created by footage coming from the gallery. The idea of having both angles joined by this membrane wants to bring fluidity and the continuity of passing from the interior and the exterior and vice versa. As we extend the membrane that brings us together, the side is extended in the metaphor of the window. The one that is giving us access to the work through the use of technology, in this case, screens at this time, and forming a sense of common experience, and at the same time separating us from the work, but also the window that is shared, where the sense of community is formed, as we are all invited to continue intervening spaces with membranes. This is why the workshop, Playing with SCOBY, is part of the piece. And the windows of our homes can become an extension of this site-specific installation. Next one. The second part of the installation presents lightweight sculptures and drawings made of the same material, bacterial cellulose. This could be thought as an extension of the idea of the lab, where the analysis of the specimens and observations are made. Next one. This is what I call the Symbiogenesis Codex, where you can see this story of what I was telling you, of this engulfed organisms, one inside of the other, happening in this drawing. With this, I want to present it as a way of a paleontological evidence as part of our own history. There is a second one that you can also view on the website of a single cell that is already evolved through time and already contains the mitochondria. Next one. Other three-dimensional specimens are included in this section, where the membranes can be seen in light projections, stretched and shaped. Next one. These pieces also make reference to the cell inside the cell exposed before, and of course to the properties of the cell that wants to contain, but also to stretch and absorb. Next one. This is a detail of one of the projections coming from the membranes that are in one of the projections. Next one. This is another specimen showing the cell inside of the cell that is talking about the symbiogenesis theory. Next one. And you can see like the rest of all this documentation on the website. Life has always been embedded in communities, bacterial, fungal, plant, animal. We are all traveling companions, individual and collective at the same time, holobionts. Thinking myself as an ecosystem formed by other ecosystems that lives in a larger ecosystem, and then a set of ecosystems that compose the earth, makes me then mention my place. In a world where walls are built, where isolation, confinement are part of our current reality, and where individualistic and egocentric ideas are the basis of societies, I question if we could change them for membranes, capable of interaction, a place of encounter and relationships. Next one. Of course, I want to give, again, a special thanks to the people that helped to make this happen. A special thanks to Steve Wong, the former curator for LAMAC, that was the one that contacted me for this piece. John Weston as well, that you will see his intervention of this piece, but also really very grateful for all his work. Jamie Costa as well, and all the LAMAC team that made this possible. Okay, and I think that it's moment to move to the second part, to the performative part. So as a way of transition, I can just explain that this, this installation has been at LAMAC from November, the part of the tanks, and that we have put these cameras and they have been taking footage from it. And the live stream started yesterday, so you can be part of this part of the installation, and we will see what it happens every week in which we do the harvesting and the intervention of the windows. As you can see, we have a view of one of the tanks, and also the windows are being intervened. And I won't narrate, maybe I will just allow you to see. Okay, here, just want to mention what happened was the harvesting of the membrane. That, of course, we're having these two cameras that are going one after the other. So sometimes we're able to see what is happening in the microscopic, well, kind of microscopic point of view. We are feeding right now the culture with sugar. Checking the conditions as well. The membranes or the films are formed in these cultures. They acquire the shape of the container in which they are grown. So in this case, that is why we're having the circle, the round shapes for the cultures that are being placed in the windows. Well, I think the harvest process will continue. Oh, well, we're taking the pH right now. And everything is documented in a format to keep track of the health of the cultures. I know that John now is very expert on kombucha growing. But well, maybe we can stop it here. If you're interested of knowing what is going to happen later, this live stream is still happening. So you're you're invited to check it today. I think it will stay there. So I think that's it. Thank you, Jamie.
Great. Thank you so much, Maru. And I don't know if John can hear me, but thank you, John, for letting us taking us with you as you are doing the harvesting. We are this leads to our Q&A section. And if anyone has any questions they would like to ask Maru, feel free to enter them directly into the chat, or if you feel comfortable and would like to take yourself off mute to ask Maru your question directly, you're more than welcome to do that now. But maybe as folks are thinking of questions, I have a few questions for you, Maru, just to kick things off. You talked a lot about community and just in working with the organic matter and that history. And I wonder, and obviously this use of technology, I think in a way really enables this community to expand in a lot of different ways. And I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit more on the community and technology relationship and aspect, and how you consider technology to be a part of that, or maybe not be a part of that, or how you figure in technology with community.
Sure. Yeah, well, it's a question that I always ask myself too, in which sense technology is actually helping us come together. We can see that, well, we are now together. We are actually, through technology, able to share experiences, to share ideas and time. So I think it's a two, or you can go both ways. Of course, technology allows us to make this type of things happen, but at the same time, it's isolating us. So for me, the community, it's through technology, but also outside of it. That we like the idea of sharing time and space can be mediated, and in this case, but well, probably know people that know me. They know that I'm really very hands-on. Like I really need to touch things, to feel things, to experiment things in real life. And of course, through this pandemic and what we are all right now experiencing, we are having this hybrid life of the virtual and the real, and sometimes they collide, but some others, like, we're just in between. So probably, and yeah, it's part of the present moment that we are facing that, and still the need of community is there. We are having our communities are from the people that we are living with in our own houses, but also we are part of other communities that are distant and that we also interact with. So the need is there, and the need to interact and to expand our sense of community is also there. And I think just of technology is another way to engage with community. Yeah, but thank you for your question.
Great, thank you. I have a few more questions. So if I'm gonna self-indulge a little bit, unless anybody, and just if anyone else has any questions, please please chime in, or again, just enter them in the chat box and I will read them out. But I wonder, Maru, that point you made about the hands-on nature of your work and just being like really physical with it, and I think that speaks a lot to the the science aspect of your work, and just like that experimentation and just being in that environment. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about how this process of creating work that's in the gallery, and so to speak, having John be your hands, like the laboratory hands, how that has been for you, and if that just any takeaways you have, if that's something that you'll be carrying into your work and practice moving forward.
Sure. Yeah, to be honest, this is the first time that I actually experiment that. I'm usually the one that wants to like be feeling how is the space and have more of a sense of what is going to happen in the installation. And yeah, probably I can say that it's work to be experienced in person. In this case, it was another type of experience for sure. And I think that there was kind of a connection um, with the cultures, because I that's part of what I explore all the time. This interspecies relationships, for me, like, it's very important to be to keep track of subtle things as like the smell, like the temperature, like a lot of things are like the pH, a lot of things are around the living, in this case the culture, that makes me know that the culture is actually in good health, in good conditions. So now that I was not able to really catch on those small details, it was through John that I was like, John, what it smells like? And he was like, well, like kombucha maybe. So, but the thing is that we started to develop a method of really checking with this. And we started to develop the way to learn how to take care, like long distance, in a long distance way. But also it made me allow things that usually within organic or nature systems happen, that is like the unexpected. And this is kind of the lack of control of all things, and just like leaving to emergence to happen. And that was part of this experience too, because there was this other person that was able to do things and combined this human non-human system to bring all this together. So yeah, I'm seeing here in the chat for more questions. Is it okay if I just answer them, or do you want to?
Yeah, I think let's keep it in chronological order. So if you want to address Sean's question first, and then Yogan after Maru addresses that question, please, yeah, feel free to take yourself off mute and ask Maru your question directly.
Sure. So Sean is asking if, how long does it take for the membrane to form, and is there right or wrong time to harvest it? and thus light play a role in the overall process. So, well, there is like it depends on what is their intention with the culture. If your intention is to obtain material, because actually this is something that people is doing to try to develop what is called biomaterials. So it's like a replacement for other type of not that sustainable materials. So if you are wanting to have a material for that type of experimentation, you will need to leave this membrane at least 1 month growing. So it develops thicker and it's like more, you're able to do more things with it. In my case, I don't really have a right or wrong time. Probably the thing is that I want the film to be completely formed, and that would require at least 1 week, and that's why we put it like that, because it's the time that it takes for the microorganisms to secrete this this cellulose that is actually a natural polymer. So they secrete the cellulose and they start, it's a kind of a weaving process, but in a natural and microscopic way. So for them to really complete that, it takes around 1 week. But if you want it like more firm or like, well, thicker, yeah, it would require a longer time. And yeah, a lot of the conditions are related or that are inside of the culture will dictate if the membrane or the film will develop like complete, or sometimes they present holes and things like that. So yeah, also in this case, light could, yeah, create, for example, lighter membranes compared to a place where it's like darker. But probably one of the conditions that needs to be kept is also pH and temperature. Then, yeah, and that's it.
Thank you, Maru. Yogan, if you would like to take yourself off mute now and ask your question.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. And congratulations, Maru, for this terrific presentation. What really struck me in your presentation is the time scales that are involved and the slowness of the processes that are involved, processes that involve beings that are so small that it can go unnoticed in a sense. But these very beings, they form the basis of life on Earth. And you talked about relationships. And so I wanted to ask you, what is your relationship with the various cultures you raised, if I may say so, and also maintain now?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I have kind of, well, thank you so much for asking the questions and for joining us for this presentation, Jogan. Appreciate this. Yeah, there is a lot of relationship mentioned because, as I was saying, it's part of my own practice. In this case, for me, the microscopic organisms that are related with this SCOBY material, that is actually the culture of SCOBY. I started to research about them in a previous work. The culture is called that work, and that involved being with them in a more immersive or embodied way. At that time for that experiment, I was trying to put different tanks and allow the cultures to kind of share my own culture. So I was like sharing my culture to this SCOBY cultures, and at the same time trying to see what was the response. So that was part of the experimentation, and then a second part was me actually wanting to be like to spend more time with them in a tank where I was able to get immersed in it. So that was kind of my starting point, that it was like really wanting to go in an interspecies relationships that could be more embodied. I've been with those cultures like since then with me. So I have a couple of cultures still alive in my own place. And Well, in general, I am fascinated about the fact that they can be living and part of my normal life. I'm not saying that I'm like producing kombucha or anything. I just have them, of course, for my art practice, but also, I don't know if it's correct to say, but because of joy. um, so besides those type of cultures, I also like explore other type of cultures that we use as like for producing bread, for example, or like fermentation, other type of things. So yeah, they are like, if there is a relationship, it's like they are part of my life.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yogan and Sean, for your questions. I just wanted to make sure before I forgot, I included a link to the next program Maru will be participating in that she mentioned. It's called Playing with SCOBY, happening on March 26th at 1 p.m. Please join us if you are able to. And there's, I received one direct question, Maru, that I will, is it easier if I copy and paste it, or should I just read it out to you?
You can read it. You can read it.
Okay, so the question is, I have heard that the microbiome in our bodies is reactive to those we live with. Can you offer any more insight into this idea through your research?
Yeah, definitely. As we were exploring during the presentation, we are already holobionts, or like these organisms are having in our inside also another type of organisms. So where we go, what we do, what we eat, um, modifies or like changes completely what we are having in our inside of our bodies, in this case our microbiome. So exterior and exterior, like the ones are that it's in our skin, but also the one that it's in, like living inside of our bodies. So yeah, definitely, of course, when we interact with people, when we sit, when we just live, we are sharing a space with microscopic organisms. I was like very interested even like in this idea of like people, for example, that talking about bread, people that prepare bread, they get microorganisms coming from the bread they are preparing if they do it like in a regular basis. So we are sharing just the space all the time, even if we don't notice. And of course, there is like some concern, like a lot of people are microphobic in the sense of like, no, microorganisms are bad. Like, of course, some of them, they produce, I don't know, we get sick because of them. But it's not that all of them are like that. And the fact is that we actually need them because they are the ones that produce, for example, if in our own stomachs, produce a lot of substances that help us uh, digest our own food, but also like there are some other research that mention that they actually affect also our emotions through the chemicals that they produce. So there is like a correlation between what we eat, what they do, like how, like what are the cultures that survive because of the conditions that they find in our own bodies. So yeah, definitely we are changing all the time, and we are interchanging our microbiome with the people that we live with.
Thank you, Maru. Forgot to unmute myself. I just have one more question, unless anyone else has any other questions they would like to ask Maru, we can end it on that. But something that is really strikes me with your exhibition, Maru, is just the use of light and how light comes into play with your work. Like we saw it with the pedestals, the dimly lit surfaces, and then even the gallery, the balcony door lights, how the the light when you see the time-lapse video from the sun, and then even from the moon and some of the street lamps, how that comes into play. And then also with some of the sculptural and still, or the sculptural objects that you have. And I was just curious if you could talk a little bit more on the relationship with light with respect to the work in the show and how that figures in with the membrane tension and other concepts that you're speaking to in your work.
Sure. Yeah, probably there's two things that I'm thinking right now. One, the fact that in the sciences we use a lot light, and I can relate in the moment that when you use a microscope, what you're using is the light, so you can be able to go and see small details and things through the membranes in the case of microscopic organisms. So light helps us to really see the world that we are in a different way. And in the case of science, it helps us to like explore in a more complete way. So that's one reference, and probably you will see that in my work a lot because of that. And also, I think in this could be more like the representation of this organism that its reflection, it would just disappear, and it's like in a way somehow what we encounter through evolution. Like a lot of the times we're like wanting to find the piece, the evidence, but some of them they would just be lost. So the idea of this thing, the reflection just goes away. It's part of what it's wanting to communicate of this. Yeah, sometimes evidence are lost, and in this case of this evolving the story of life. Yeah, that would be the two ones I'm thinking of.
Great, thank you so much, Maru. Thank you to everyone who joined us, and just really massive thanks, Maru, for sharing your time and your insights and just this really incredible exhibition and work that you have at LMAG. And I would highly encourage folks, if you have not yet seen Membrane Tensions, please visit lamag.org, especially for the live stream feed that we have going up right now for the aspect that we saw today. And massive thanks also to the Department on Disability for providing us with today's sign language interpreter services and live stream text. We really appreciate you being here, and just thank you, thank you, thank you. And one final plug, or before I do that, I also just would be really remiss if we did not acknowledge and thank John Weston. Yay, thank you for being, thank you for just everything that you do, and especially for today's performance, and again, taking us with you as you have been doing this work for the past several months, and just everything you do, John. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And again, if you can join us on Friday, March 26th, again with Maru. Thanks, Gabriel. If you can join us on Friday, March 26th with Maru again, we have LMAG playing with SCOBY workshop. There is a supply list, so please make sure you visit our website to see the supply list and register for it, although it's free. And with that, I think we'll close the program. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care, stay safe, and we'll see you virtually again soon.